It was the beginning of my sophomore year of college, and I felt like I was on the verge of a mental breakdown. In 1 week, I had midterm exams kicking my butt, my frat bro boyfriend out partying with other girls, and on top of that, nobody in my family was returning my calls. This was unusual. I spoke to my divorced parents at least 3 times a day, and their silence was grinding on my nerves. After a panic attack rendered me inconsolable, I left my dad a 3 a.m. voicemail. Please buy me a plane ticket home. That weekend, he picked me up from the airport with news. We're glad you're home, he told me. Your mom has colon cancer. Just like that, as if we were talking about the weather or the copious amounts of Micocina queso I had plotted to consume that weekend. Cancer. I instantly began crying, not out of grief, but out of shock. The 6 people I had known to contract the disease had all died from it. At home, my fabulous red-hair mother greeted me in the kitchen, hooked up to a portable chemotherapy machine. I learned she had been undergoing treatment for over a month for tumors all over her body. My family had neglected to tell me because they didn't want to upset me while I was at school. Looking at her with newly educated eyes, it was obvious that she was sick. I'll give you whatever you want, I told her through hyperventilating tears. Whatever organs you need, whatever you want. That type of selflessness is not something that I would have expected from myself previously. The relationship with my mom had been rocky in the past. Don't get me wrong, she was a great mother, but we just never seemed to see eye to eye. Didn't matter if it was politics, clothing, or other lifestyle choices, there was always an argument waiting to happen. One of our biggest fights, one that still haunts me, was about a metallic gold bikini. She bought it months before her diagnosis, and I was mortified that my mother would go out in public in that thing. During our argument, I was cruel enough to remind her of her age and told her I hated her for buying it. But she loved me unconditionally, always forgiving me for little things like this. Now it was my turn to return the favor, if only I could figure out how. That weekend, she only asked one thing from me, to spend time with her. We sat in bed watching crappy TV while we mindlessly chatted about the problems of a 19-year-old, avoiding the cancerous elephant in the room. I returned to school that Sunday with a plan, and I didn't ask permission. I withdrew myself from college and called my dad, making plans to move me home. Breaking the news to my friends and saying out loud that my mom had cancer was the hardest part of this transition. As I explained the situation to them, though, they were comforting. The next 8 months of my life were spent in and out of doctor's appointments as I took on the role of my mother's caretaker. I held her hand through chemo treatments, picked up her favorite foods like Bubba's bananas pudding, and hugged her as many times as possible to remind her that she wasn't alone in this fight. I also did my best to make the fight for her life fun. We frequently spent our afternoons in the wig shops on Lemon Avenue, just us and the trannies, buying colorful hair pieces to wear out while having fun. My mom had always wanted long hair, so her favorite wig gave her red locks down to her back. I preferred something a little more wild, a fuchsia bob, and we frequently sported the looks while at Tom Thumb in Highland Park Village. I re-enrolled at school in Memphis when my mother went into remission, but the cancer came back with a vengeance. While I may have been physically removed, my mind was never far away from my mother and her health. I returned home for my first semester of senior year to a surprising sight. My mom was using a walker to get around our house. She was constantly weak from her medication, but I had an uncomfortable feeling that this time it was different. She took to her bed that night and rarely rose from it afterwards. I went into panic mode, wondering if my family had kept her health from me for a second time. Her newest diagnosis wasn't good. The cancer was growing quicker than the surgeries, radiation, and chemotherapy could fight it. I began spending every waking and sleeping moment with her, from making her favorite dishes and begging her to eat them, to coaxing her to taking her medication and sleeping in bed with her. The world outside of my house slowly disappeared, and I felt like I was drowning. I put on a brave face around my family and friends, referred to her condition as not the best, and refused to believe that she was dying. But my mother did die a week after I came home for Christmas break. The last 12 hours were spent under hospice care, so she wasn't in pain. The night before her death, I retreated to my bedroom for the first time since coming home in an attempt to get a full night's sleep, and woke up promptly at 7:43 a.m., the moments that she was taking her last breaths. I thought about going to check on her, but I was just too tired. This is something I'm thankful for. I try not to remember the shell of her former self that she was in those last days, but instead, the 21 years that we had together. After she was gone, I sat with my mother's body as we waited for the funeral home to arrive. I thought about what our lives had been like together, the special shopping trips, the baking sessions, and the fights over everything from that stupid gold bikini to what was for dinner, and realized that those were the only memories I was going to have for the rest of my life. In honor of my mother's first birthday after her passing, I began to share my story on the D Magazine blogs. In these posts, I urged my friends to hold their parents accountable for getting colonoscopies and quickly received the feedback that made the pain of sharing worth it. A friend's father went in for the procedure where they found polyps that would have eventually turned into cancer. These masses were removed, and he was saved from the disease that had killed my mother. I finally felt like something good could come from everything I had been through. I could honor my mother's memory. Life after losing a parent is difficult, but life after losing a parent prematurely is devastating. Wednesday is the 2-year and 1-month anniversary of my mother's death. It's startling to see how quickly time has passed since I lost her, but it's the only significance that that day holds for me. I'm not sadder on the anniversaries of her death because every day I'm assaulted with images of happy mothers and daughters on Facebook, on television, or even when I'm just walking in the street. My feelings of jealousy are overwhelming at times. I won't have a mother to look to for advice or to help me plan my wedding. Instead, all I have are fading memories, a CD where I burnt the voicemails that she left me in the months before her passing, and family photos. During her 2 years of fighting cancer, our previously rocky relationship grew beyond the confines of mother and daughter. We actually became friends, an opportunity that I consider myself lucky to experience. It's the evolution of our relationship that is the greatest accomplishment of my life. My relationship with my mom was better than ever when she died. It's just sad that it took a life-ending illness to do it. It feels like the barely there silver lining on a situation I have not yet fully been able to grasp.